My daughter screamed those words at me like I was a child who couldn't understand simple English. "You're too old and sick to live alone, Mom." Her perfectly manicured finger pointed at my trembling hand, as if it were evidence in a criminal trial. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. It was a Tuesday morning in September when everything changed. I remember because Tuesdays were always my grocery shopping days, and I had just finished my coffee when I heard Victoria's car pull into the driveway. I wasn't expecting her. My daughter rarely visited without calling first, and when she did show up unannounced, it usually meant she wanted something. I walked to the front door, feeling that familiar flutter of hope that maybe, just maybe, this time she was coming just to see me, just to sit and talk like we used to do when she was younger, before her husband Trevor came into the picture with his expensive suits and his talk about maximizing assets and opportunity costs. "Mom, we need to talk," Victoria said the moment I opened the door. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She just brushed past me into the living room, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floors that Henry and I had installed ourselves 40 years ago. "Would you like some tea, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "I just baked some banana bread yesterday. Your favorite." "I don't have time for tea, Mom." She was already looking around the room with that expression I'd come to recognize. The one that said she was calculating, measuring, evaluating. "We need to discuss your living situation." My living situation. As if my home of 45 years was some kind of problem that needed solving. "What about it?" I sat down in Henry's old armchair, the one I still couldn't bring myself to get rid of. My hands were shaking more than usual that morning. The Parkinson's always got worse when I was nervous, and something about Victoria's tone made my stomach tighten. "Mom, you're 72 years old. You have Parkinson's disease. You live alone in this big house." She gestured around the room as if the house itself was attacking me. "It's not safe anymore." "Victoria, I'm managing just fine. Dr. Peters said my condition is stable. The tremors are mild and I take my medication every day. I can still drive. I can still cook. I can still..." "Can you?" She cut me off, pulling out her phone. "Because I got a call from Mrs. Henderson next door 3 days ago. She said she heard a crash and came over to check on you. She found you on the kitchen floor." I felt my cheeks grow warm. Yes. I'd slipped on some water I'd spilled while filling the kettle. It was clumsy, nothing more. I'd gotten right back up, no bruises, no injuries. Mrs. Henderson had made such a fuss, and I'd assured her I was fine. "That was nothing, honey. I just slipped." "It happens to everyone. It happens to elderly people who can't take care of themselves anymore." Victoria's voice was sharp, clinical. "Mom, I've been talking to Trevor, and we both agree. It's time." "Time for what?" "Time for you to move into a care facility." The words hit me like a physical blow. A care facility. She made it sound so reasonable, so logical. But what she meant was a nursing home. She wanted to put me in a nursing home. "Victoria, I don't need a nursing home. I'm not incapacitated. I taught school for 40 years. I raised you and your brother in this house. I took care of your father through his cancer until the day he died. I think I can manage to take care of myself." "That's exactly the problem, Mom." She sat down across from me, her face softening into what I recognized as her persuasion expression. "You've spent your whole life taking care of other people. Don't you think you deserve to be taken care of for once? To be somewhere safe, where trained professionals can help you." It sounded so caring when she put it that way. For a moment, I almost believed she was doing this out of love. "I appreciate your concern, sweetheart, but I'm happy here. This is my home. Your father and I built our life here. His memory is in every room. I'm not ready to leave." Victoria's expression hardened. "Mom, I'm not asking. I've already made the arrangements. Shady Pines Care Facility has an opening, and Dr. Morrison has signed off on the paperwork." "Dr. Morrison? I've never heard of a Dr. Morrison." "Dr. Peters is my doctor. Dr. Morrison is a geriatric specialist. I had him review your medical records, and he agrees that you need supervised care." My heart was pounding now. "You had a stranger review my medical records without telling me?" "I have medical power of attorney, Mom. Remember? You signed that form after Dad died just in case something happened to you." I did remember. Victoria had convinced me it was just a precaution, something every family should have. I trusted her. I trusted my own daughter. "That doesn't give you the right to make decisions for me when I'm perfectly capable of making them myself," I said, my voice shaking, and not from the Parkinson's this time. "Are you capable, though?" Victoria stood up, walking over to the mantel where I kept family photos. She picked up one of Henry and me on our wedding day. "When was the last time you dusted in here, Mom? When was the last time you properly cleaned the bathroom? This house is too much for you to maintain." so hire me a cleaning service. I don't need to leave my home because the dust bothers you. It's not about dust. Her voice rose, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Anger, impatience. It's about you being stubborn and refusing to accept reality. You're sick, Mom. You're only going to get worse. What happens when you fall and break a hip? What happens when you can't remember to take your medications? What happens when you leave the stove on and burn the house down? I've never left the stove on in my life. Not yet. But you will. That's what happens with Parkinson's, Mom. The cognitive decline, the memory issues, I don't have cognitive decline. I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. I do the crossword puzzle every morning. I balance my checkbook. I remember every student I ever taught, every birthday, every anniversary. My mind is fine. Victoria, you can't just decide I'm incompetent because it's convenient for you. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Victoria's face went cold. Convenient for me? You think this is convenient for me? Do you have any idea how much time I've spent arranging this? How many phone calls, how many meetings with doctors and facility administrators? I have a career, Mom. I have responsibilities. And I'm trying to do the right thing for you, even though you're making it incredibly difficult. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to take back what I'd said. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she'd said, responsibilities, as if I was just another item on her to-do list. Or maybe it was the way she kept looking past me out the window at the yard, at the neighborhood that had changed so much in recent years. This area had once been quiet and residential. Now, coffee shops and boutiques were popping up on every corner. Property values had skyrocketed. Henry and I had bought this house for $30,000 in 1980. According to the real estate flyers that kept showing up in my mailbox, it was worth nearly $1 million now. When would this happen? I asked quietly. This move to Shady Pines. Victoria's face brightened immediately. Today, actually. I have the car packed with some of your things. We can get you settled in, and then I'll come back for the rest. Today? Victoria, I haven't even. I need time to think about this, to prepare, to say goodbye to the house. Mom, dragging this out will only make it harder. Trust me, a clean break is better. I've already notified the facility that you're coming. They're expecting you this afternoon. I looked around the living room. At the couch where I'd nursed Victoria when she was sick. At the bookshelf full of books Henry and I had collected over the years. At the piano in the corner that hadn't been played since Henry died but that I dusted lovingly every week. Can I at least pack my own things? I've already done that, Mom. I know what you need. Of course she did. She'd already made every decision for me. Why should packing be any different? There's paperwork you need to sign, Victoria continued, pulling a folder from her expensive leather bag. Just standard admission forms. Nothing complicated. I took the papers with trembling hands. The words blurred together, terms like voluntary admission and consent for treatment, and authorization for financial management. What's this about financial management? I asked. Oh, that's just so the facility can withdraw the monthly fees from your account automatically. It's easier than writing checks every month, with your tremors and all. It made sense. Everything Victoria said made sense. And yet something felt wrong. Something felt very, very wrong. But she was my daughter. My only daughter. Surely she had my best interests at heart. If I sign this, I said slowly, can I change my mind? Can I come home if I don't like it there? Of course, Mom. This is just temporary. Just until we figure out a better long-term solution. Maybe we can find you a nice apartment with assisted living services. But for now, Shady Pines is the best option. I looked at my daughter's face. She was smiling at me, that same smile she'd used as a little girl when she wanted something. And I thought about what she'd said about me being stubborn, about me refusing to accept reality. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being foolish, insisting I could live alone when my hands shook so badly I could barely hold a pen. Maybe it was selfish of me to worry my children, to make them stress about my safety. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay, I'll try it. Victoria's smile widened. She practically shoved the pen into my hand, guiding the papers to a small table. I signed. My signature was shaky and barely legible, but it was done. Perfect. Victoria scooped up the papers and tucked them back into her bag. Now, let's get you changed into something more comfortable for the drive. Do you have a tracksuit or something? An hour later, I was sitting in the passenger seat of Victoria's BMW, watching my house disappear in the side mirror. She'd barely given me time to walk through the rooms one last time. She'd rushed me, saying we were on a schedule, that the facility needed us there by 2 o'clock for the admission process. I'd managed to grab a few things she hadn't packed. The small framed photo of Henry that I kept on my nightstand, my mother's rosary beads, and the leather journal Henry had given me on our last anniversary. Write down your thoughts, he'd said. Someday, these memories will be precious. If only he could see me now. Shady Pines Care Facility was not what I'd imagined. Victoria had described it as a lovely community, with excellent amenities. What I saw was a squat, gray building surrounded by a chain-link fence. The lawn was patchy and brown. The sign out front was missing several letters, so it read, "Je dépend si faculty." "Here we are," Victoria said brightly, as if we'd arrived at a resort. As we walked through the automatic doors, I was hit by the smell. Disinfectant trying desperately to cover the odors of age, illness, and despair. The lobby was decorated in depressing shades of beige and gray. A television in the corner was playing game shows that no one was watching. An older man in a wheelchair sat by the window, staring blankly at the parking lot. A woman shuffled past us in a bathrobe, muttering to herself. This was where my daughter was putting me. "Miss Thompson." A woman in pink scrubs approached us with a clipboard. Her smile was professional but didn't reach her eyes. "We've been expecting you. I'm Deborah, the intake coordinator. If you'll just follow me, we'll get you all settled in." I followed like a prisoner being led to her cell. Victoria walked beside me, chattering about how nice everything was, how clean, how professional. I wondered if she actually believed what she was saying, or if she was just trying to convince herself. My room was small and sterile. 2 beds, 2 small dressers, a shared bathroom. My roommate was apparently at physical therapy, so I had a few minutes to settle in before meeting her. Victoria helped me unpack the bag she'd brought: pajamas, slippers, a few changes of clothes. Nothing I would have chosen for myself. She'd packed my oldest, most worn-out things. The nice outfits I kept for church and special occasions were apparently staying at the house that was no longer mine. "Well, Mom, I think you're all set." Victoria checked her watch. "I have a meeting at 4, so I should get going. But I'll call you tomorrow, okay? You're leaving already?" "Mom, I told you I have a meeting. A very important client. But you're in good hands here. If you need anything, just press the call button." She pointed to a red button on the wall by the bed. And then she was gone. My daughter hugged me quickly, awkwardly, and walked out of my new room without looking back. I sat down on the thin mattress and looked around at my new reality. Through the window, I could see the parking lot and, beyond it, a busy street. Cars rushed past, people going about their lives, free to come and go as they pleased. I thought about my house, about my garden that would need watering, about the mail that would pile up, about all the little things that made a place a home. And I wondered if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. But I'd signed the papers. I'd agreed to come here. And my daughter had promised it was temporary. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I wanted so desperately to believe her. The first night at Shady Pines was the longest of my life. My roommate turned out to be a woman named Gladys who was 84 and had advanced dementia. She was sweet enough, but she thought I was her sister Margaret and kept asking me when we were going home to Mother's house. Every time I gently reminded her that I wasn't Margaret, she'd look confused and hurt, so eventually I just stopped correcting her. The bed was hard and narrow, nothing like the comfortable mattress Henry and I had picked out together 20 years ago. The pillows smelled like industrial detergent. Through the thin walls, I could hear someone crying in the next room, a sound that went on for hours until finally, mercifully, it stopped. I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, listening to Gladys snore and watching the headlights from passing cars sweep across the ceiling. I kept thinking about my house, wondering if Victoria had remembered to lock the back door, if she'd turned off all the lights, if she'd brought in the mail, if she'd already called a realtor. The thought came unbidden, and I tried to push it away. Victoria wouldn't do that. She'd said this was temporary. She'd promised. But then I remembered the way she'd looked around my living room that morning, that calculating expression on her face. The way she'd rushed me out, barely giving me time to say goodbye. The way she'd packed my oldest, most threadbare clothes, as if she didn't expect me to need anything nice where I was going. "Stop it, Eleanor," I told myself. "You're being paranoid. She's your daughter. She loves you." But the doubt had taken root and I couldn't shake it. Morning came too early. A nurse I didn't recognize opened the door at 6 o'clock and turned on the overhead light without warning.
"Rise and shine, ladies!"
"Time for vitals." She took my blood pressure and temperature with brisk efficiency, barely looking at me as she wrote numbers on a chart. When I asked her name, she just said, "Sandra," and moved on to Gladys. Breakfast was served in a large dining room that reminded me of a school cafeteria. Long tables, plastic trays, food that looked like it had been sitting under heat lamps for hours. I sat by myself in the corner, picking at rubbery eggs and toast that had gone cold. An elderly man tried to sit next to me, but a nurse quickly redirected him to another table. "Mr. Peterson, you know you sit with your group," she said, her tone suggesting this was a conversation they'd had many times before. Groups. We were divided into groups based on our level of cognitive function. I would learn this later, along with many other things about how Shady Pines operated. After breakfast, I was told to report to the activities room for morning enrichment. This turned out to be a sad affair where a 2 cheerful activities coordinator named Beth led us in singing. She'll be coming round the mountain. While showing us pictures on poster board, as if we were children in press school, I sat in the back and didn't sing. Beth kept giving me encouraging smiles, but I couldn't bring myself to participate. This wasn't enrichment. This was humiliation. Around 10 o'clock, I was allowed to return to my room. I sat on my bed and picked up the phone to call Victoria. Surely she'd answer now. Surely she'd want to know how my first night had gone. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's Mom. Just wanted to let you know I'm settling in. Could you call me back when you get a chance? I have some questions about the house and, well, just call me, please." She didn't call back that day, or the next day, or the day after that. By the end of my first week at Shady Pines, I'd left Victoria 6 messages. None had been returned. I'd also tried calling my son, Marcus, but he lived in Seattle and traveled constantly for work. His wife, Jennifer, answered once and promised to have him call me back, but he never did. I was beginning to understand how people ended up forgotten in places like this. The facility ran on a strict schedule. Breakfast at 7, morning activities at 9, lunch at noon, afternoon activities at 2, dinner at 5, medication at 7, lights out by 9. Every day was exactly the same. The staff rotated through in shifts, and most of them treated us like objects to be managed rather than people with thoughts and feelings. But there was one exception. Her name was Rosa Martinez, and she worked the evening shift 3 days a week. She was young, couldn't have been more than 28 or 30, with kind brown eyes and a smile that actually reached those eyes. Unlike the other nurses who rushed through their duties with mechanical efficiency, Rosa took her time. She asked questions and actually listened to the answers. It was Rosa who found me crying in my room on day 5. I'd been trying to be strong, to make the best of things, to believe Victoria's promise that this was temporary. But that afternoon, I'd finally reached Victoria on the phone, and our conversation had shattered something inside me. "Mom, I'm sorry I haven't called back," she'd said, her voice distracted. "Work has been crazy. How are you doing, Victoria? I need to come home. This place isn't right for me. The people here are much sicker than I am. I don't belong, Mom, we've talked about this. You're exactly where you need to be. But you said it was temporary. You said we'd figure out another solution." There was a pause. "Then, Mom, I think you need to accept that this is your new home now. I've already started boxing up your things at the house." My heart stopped. Boxing up my things? "Victoria, what are you doing?" "I'm getting the house ready to sell, Mom. We talked about this." "We most certainly did not." "Victoria, that's my house. You can't just sell it without my permission." "Actually, Mom, I can. You signed the power of attorney papers. And frankly, you're in no position to maintain a house anymore. The money from the sale will go toward your care here. It's the responsible thing to do." "I didn't sign papers giving you permission to sell my house." "I signed admission forms for the nursing home." "Mom, you're confused. This is exactly why you need to be in supervised care." "Look, I have to go. I'll try to visit next week." She'd hung up before I could respond. That's when the tears came, not quiet, dignified tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. I'd been betrayed by my own daughter. She'd tricked me, manipulated me, lied to me. And now she was stealing my home, my memories, everything Henry and I had built together. "Mrs. Thompson." I looked up to see Rosa standing in the doorway, genuine concern on her face. "I'm fine," I said automatically, wiping at my eyes. "Just having a moment." Rosa closed the door behind her and sat down on the bed next to me. "You're not fine. And that's okay. This is a hard place to be." Something about her kindness broke through my defenses. The whole story came pouring out. Victoria's sudden appearance, the rushed admission, the papers I'd signed without really understanding, the phone call I'd just had. Rosa listened without interrupting, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "Mrs. Thompson, I don't think you should be here." I looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've been working in elder care for 6 years. I've seen hundreds of patients. You're not like the others. You're cognitively intact, you're mobile, you're independent. Most of the people here have advanced dementia or serious physical limitations. You're different. Then why am I here?" Rosa bit her lip, as if weighing whether to say what she was thinking. Finally, she said, "Mrs. Thompson, can I ask you a personal question? Is your house worth a lot of money?" The question surprised me. "I suppose so. The neighborhood has changed a lot in recent years. Property values have gone up." Rosa nodded slowly. "I thought so, Mrs. Thompson. In my experience, when someone like you, someone who's still capable, ends up in a place like this, it's usually because someone in their family wants something. Usually money or property." The words confirmed what I'd been afraid to admit to myself. "What do I do?" I whispered. "She has power of attorney. She's selling my house. I signed papers. I don't even know what I signed. Do you have a copy of those papers? No. Victoria took them all with her. Rosa thought for a moment. Okay. First thing tomorrow, I want you to request copies of your admission paperwork. You have a legal right to see what you signed. Second, do you have a lawyer? Or anyone you trust who could help you? I thought about it. Most of our friends had passed away or moved to be closer to their own children. Henry's siblings were all gone. But then I remembered something. Judge Clark, I said suddenly. Raymond Clark. He and Henry were best friends since college. He still sends me a card every Christmas. He said if I ever needed anything. Then you need to contact him, Rosa said firmly. As soon as possible. Mrs. Thompson, I can't prove anything, but I've seen situations like this before. If your daughter is rushing to sell your house and has you signed in here, she might be trying to make it very difficult for you to leave. What do you mean? Rosa hesitated. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but there are notes in your file that concern me. Notes that say you have memory problems and confusion. Notes that suggest you have cognitive impairment that I haven't observed. My blood ran cold. Someone wrote that I have memory problems, but I don't. My mind is fine. I know that. But if those notes are in your official medical file, and if your daughter is using them to justify keeping you here. Rosa didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Victoria wasn't just taking my house. She was taking my credibility, my autonomy, my very identity. She was rewriting my reality to suit her purposes. Help me, I said, gripping Rosa's hand. Please, help me contact Judge Clark. Rosa squeezed my hand back. I'll do everything I can. But Mrs. Thompson, you need to be careful. Don't let anyone here know what you're planning. Some of the staff, let's just say they're loyal to whoever is paying the bills. And right now, that's your daughter. She gave me a small piece of paper with her personal phone number written on it. Call me if you need anything. And Mrs. Thompson, don't give up, you're stronger than you think. After Rosa left, I sat alone in my room, my mind racing. For the first time since arriving at Shady Pines, I felt something other than despair. I felt anger. And anger, I was discovering, could be a very clarifying emotion. My daughter thought she could dispose of me like an inconvenient piece of furniture. She thought she could steal my home, my life, my dignity, and I would just accept it because I was old and sick and powerless. She was wrong. I might have Parkinson's disease. My hands might shake. I might be 72 years old. But Eleanor Grace Thompson was not finished yet. Not by a long shot. I picked up Henry's photo from my nightstand and looked into his kind, familiar face. I'm gonna fight, sweetheart, I whispered. Just like you always taught me. I'm going to fight. And for the first time in a week, I smiled. The next morning, I woke up with purpose for the first time since arriving at Shady Pines. I dressed carefully in the best outfit Victoria had packed, a simple blue cardigan and slacks, and made my way to the administrative office immediately after breakfast. The woman behind the desk looked up with barely concealed irritation when I knocked on the open door. Yes? She said, not bothering to introduce herself. Good morning. I'm Eleanor Thompson, room 214. I'd like to request copies of my admission paperwork, please. The woman, her nameplate read, Judith Morse, administrator, frowned. That's an unusual request. Why do you need copies? Because they're my papers, and I have a right to see what I signed. I kept my voice pleasant but firm, channeling the same tone I'd used with difficult parents during my teaching years. Mrs. Thompson, all your paperwork is in order. There's no need to. I'm not questioning whether they're in order. I simply want copies of documents that pertain to me. That's my legal right, isn't it? Judith's frown deepened. She picked up her phone and pressed a button. Deborah, can you pull the admission file for Eleanor Thompson in 242? Yes, she's requesting copies. A pause. I'm aware that's unusual. Just pull the file, please. She hung up and gave me a tight smile. It'll take a few days to process your request. A few days. To photocopy some papers. We have procedures, Mrs. Thompson. Everything has to be reviewed by the facility's legal team before we can release copies to residents. Legal team. For photocopies. I didn't believe that for a second, but I also knew that pushing too hard might raise suspicions. I understand, I said sweetly. Thank you so much for your help. As I turned to leave, Judith called after me, Mrs. Thompson. Your daughter specifically requested that we notify her if you seemed confused or agitated. Are you feeling all right? There it was. Victoria had set up a system to be alerted if I caused any trouble. Every move I made was being reported back to her. I'm feeling perfectly well, thank you, I said with a smile. Just exercising my rights as a resident. There's nothing confused or agitated about that, is there? Judith didn't answer, but I could feel her eyes on my back as I walked away. I spent the rest of the morning in my room, trying to remember every detail of that day Victoria had come to my house. What exactly had she said? What papers had I actually seen before signing? I pulled out the leather journal Henry had given me and started writing everything down, every conversation, every detail I could remember. Around 11 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. I quickly tucked the journal under my pillow. Come in. It was a man in a white coat I'd never seen before. He was in his 50s, with thinning gray hair and an expression that tried to be friendly but came across as condescending. Mrs. Thompson, I'm Dr. Morrison. I wanted to stop by and see how you're settling in. Dr. Morrison. The doctor Victoria had mentioned, the one who'd supposedly reviewed my medical records and declared me unfit for independent living. Dr. Morrison, I said carefully.
Yes, my daughter mentioned you. Wonderful.
I'm so glad I could finally meet you in person. He pulled up a chair without being invited and sat down. Now I understand you've been having some adjustment difficulties. That's completely normal. Change is hard, especially at your age. I'm adjusting fine, I said. I'm just trying to understand exactly why I'm here. Well, you're here because you need care, Mrs. Thompson. You have Parkinson's disease, and you were living alone. Your daughter was quite concerned about your safety. My Parkinson's is mild. Dr. Peters, my actual doctor, said I was managing well. Dr. Morrison's smile didn't waver. Dr. Peters may not have been aware of the full extent of your condition. Your daughter provided me with additional information about memory issues, confusion, incidents of disorientation. That's not true. I don't have memory issues. Mrs. Thompson, it's very common for patients to be unaware of their own cognitive decline. It's called anosognosia, the brain's inability to recognize its own deficits. I stared at him. He was actually trying to convince me that my insistence that I was mentally sound was itself evidence of mental decline. It was a perfect trap. The more I argued that I was fine, the more I proved I wasn't. Dr. Morrison, I said slowly, when did you last actually examine me? I reviewed your medical records very thoroughly. But when did you examine me? In person? He shifted in his chair. That wasn't necessary. The records were quite comprehensive. So you signed papers declaring me unfit for independent living without ever meeting me or examining me. Mrs. Thompson, I don't appreciate your tone. I'm trying to help you. Are you? I leaned forward. Are you helping my daughter? Hi, Dr. Morrison stood up abruptly. I think you're becoming agitated. I'm going to recommend an adjustment to your medications. Something to help you feel calmer. I don't need medication. I need answers. This is exactly the kind of defensive behavior that concerns me. He was writing something in a small notebook. I'll speak with the nursing staff about monitoring you more closely. We want to make sure you're safe. And after he left, I sat trembling. And this time it wasn't from the Parkinson's. They were building a case against me, documenting every question I asked, every concern I raised, as evidence of confusion and agitation. If I fought back, I was paranoid. If I stayed quiet, they'd won. I needed help, and I needed it fast. That evening when Rosa came on duty, I was waiting for her. The moment she entered my room to do evening checks, I pulled out the small piece of paper with her phone number. I tried to get copies of my paperwork. I whispered, mindful that Gladys was dozing in the next bed. The administrator said it would take days. And then a Dr. Morrison came to see me. Dr. Morrison was here. Rosa's face darkened. Mrs. Thompson, that man is not on staff here. He comes in occasionally as a consultant, but he's not a regular doctor. From what I've heard, he's known for signing off on commitments that other doctors won't approve. He told me I have anosognosia, that my insistence that I'm mentally sound is proof that I'm not. Rosa shook her head in disgust. That's a classic manipulation tactic. Mrs. Thompson, did you try to contact Judge Clark? I don't have his number. It would be in my address book, but that's at home. I tried calling information, but there are 3 Raymond Clarks in the area. Okay, listen carefully. Rosa glanced at the door, then spoke quickly and quietly. I'm off tomorrow, but I'm going to use that time to do some research. I have access to legal databases through my nursing program. I'll try to find Judge Clark's contact information and look up what rights you have as a resident here. But Mrs. Thompson, you need to be very careful. Don't confront anyone, don't make demands. Don't give them any reason to increase your medications or move you to a secured unit. Secured unit. For residents who are considered a danger to themselves or others, or who have severe dementia and might wander. Once you're in there, it's much harder to get out. They can legally hold you if they claim you're not competent to make your own decisions. The thought made my blood run cold. I could be locked away, drugged into compliance, and there would be nothing I could do about it. Rosa, why are you helping me? You could lose your job. Rosa was quiet for a moment. My grandmother, she finally said. She was in a place like this. My aunt put her there so she could sell her house, just like your daughter is doing. By the time we found out what was happening, Abuela had given up. She died 6 months later, and I know it wasn't from old age. It was from a broken heart. I couldn't save her, Mrs. Thompson. But maybe I can help save you. She squeezed my hand and then left to continue her rounds. I lay awake most of that night, my mind spinning. I thought about Victoria as a little girl, how she used to climb into my lap when she had a nightmare. How she'd cried on her first day of kindergarten, until I promised I'd be waiting right there when school ended. How proud she'd been when she graduated college. How she'd hugged me and said, "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom." Where had that girl gone? When had she become this person who could look her own mother in the eye and lie, who could steal and manipulate without apparent guilt? Or maybe she'd always been this way, and I just refused to see it. 2 days later, Judith from administration came to my room with a manila envelope. "Your paperwork, Mrs. Thompson," she said coolly, handing it to me. "Everything you requested." The moment she left, I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. There were dozens of pages. Admission forms, medical history, consent for treatment, financial agreements. I read through each one carefully, and what I found made my stomach drop. The document Victoria had told me was just a temporary admission form was actually a voluntary commitment agreement. By signing it, I had supposedly agreed that I was unable to care for myself and was voluntarily requesting long-term residential care. The financial agreement authorized Shady Pines to bill my accounts directly and gave Victoria, as my power of attorney, the right to manage all my finances necessary for my care. But the worst was the medical evaluation form, supposedly filled out by Dr. Morrison. It claimed I had moderate dementia, frequent confusion, memory loss, and was at high risk for wandering and self-harm. None of it was true, but there it was, in black and white, in an official medical document. I was reading it for the third time when Rosa slipped into my room. It was her day off, but she'd come in anyway. "I found him," she said quietly, handing me a piece of paper. "Judge Raymond Clark, he's semi-retired but still hears cases part-time. I have his office number and his home number." "Rosa, I can't thank you enough." "Don't thank me yet." "Thompson, I need to tell you something else I found out." She sat down on the bed next to me. "I did some digging into your daughter's background. She's a real estate developer, right?" "Yes." "She and her husband Trevor have a company together. Did you know that your property is zoned for commercial development? And that there's a big shopping complex being planned for your neighborhood?" I shook my head. "Mrs. Thompson, your house and the 3 properties next to it are the only things standing in the way of that development. If your daughter can acquire your property, she and her partners stand to make millions. Not from selling your house, from selling it to developers and being part of the development deal." The room seemed to tilt. "How do you know all this?" "It's public record. The development plans were filed with the city 6 months ago. Your daughter's company is listed as one of the partners." 6 months ago. Right around the time Henry died. While I was grieving, while I was vulnerable and alone, Victoria had been planning this. "She was waiting," I said slowly. "Waiting for the right moment to make her move." "I think so. And Mrs. Thompson, the other 3 homeowners. They've all been approached with very generous offers to sell. Apparently, your property is the last holdout. Without it, the whole deal falls apart." Now everything made sense. The sudden concern about my health, the rushed admission to the nursing home, the insistence that this was for my own good. Victoria wasn't trying to help me. She was removing me from the equation so she could steal my property and make her fortune. I looked down at the papers in my lap, at the false medical evaluation, at the signature that was supposedly mine, but looked wrong somehow, shakier than usual, as if someone had guided my hand or traced over it. "I'm going to call Judge Clark," I said. "Right now." "Use the phone in the visitor's lounge," Rosa suggested. "Your room phone might be monitored. I'll keep watch and let you know if anyone's coming." My heart was pounding as I dialed the number Rosa had given me. It rang 3 times and then a familiar voice answered. "Clark Residence. Raymond. It's Eleanor Thompson, Henry Thompson's wife." There was a moment of surprised silence. "Eleanor, my goodness, it's been too long? How are you, dear?" And just hearing that kind, familiar voice. Someone who'd known me and Henry for decades, who knew me as a person, not a problem to be managed. I broke down. "Raymond, I'm in terrible trouble, and I need your help." Judge Raymond Clark arrived at Shady Pines the very next morning. I'd been so afraid he wouldn't believe me, that he'd think I was just a confused old woman imagining conspiracies. But Raymond had known Henry and me for over 40 years. He'd been the best man at our wedding. He'd held our children when they were babies. And when I told him everything, Victoria's sudden concern, the rushed admission, the papers I'd signed without understanding, the plans to sell my house, the false medical reports, he'd listened without interruption. "Eleanor, I'm coming to see you first thing tomorrow," he'd said firmly. "Don't sign anything else. Don't agree to anything. And don't let them give you any new medications. Tell them you're allergic if you have to, but don't take anything until I get there." Now he sat across from me in the facility's small, cheerless visitor's lounge, his briefcase open on the table between us. At 76, Raymond was still sharp as a tack, with the commanding presence that had served him well during his years on the bench. "Let me see the paperwork," he said. I handed him the manila envelope. He read through each document slowly, his expression growing darker with every page. This is even worse than I thought, he finally said. Eleanor, this isn't just unethical. What your daughter has done may be criminal. Criminal. My voice came out as a whisper. Elder abuse, fraud, possibly forgery. Look at this signature here. He pointed to one of the documents. Does this look like your signature to you? I studied it carefully. It was similar to mine, but something was off. The E was wrong. I always made a distinctive loop in my E that wasn't there. And the Thompson was too neat. My Parkinson's tremors always made my handwriting a bit uneven, but this was almost too steady. I don't think that's my signature, I said slowly. But Raymond, I was there. I remember signing papers. Maybe I'm confused about Eleanor Grace Thompson. Raymond's voice was stern but kind. You are one of the sharpest people I've ever known. You taught elementary school for 40 years. Henry used to brag that you could remember the names of every single student you ever taught. Don't let these people make you doubt yourself. Tears sprang to my eyes. Everyone here keeps telling me I'm confused, that I have memory problems, that I can't trust my own mind. That's called gaslighting, and it's a classic tactic of abusers. Raymond pulled out a legal pad and began taking notes. Now let's go through this systematically. Tell me everything that happened the day Victoria came to your house. I told him every detail I could remember. The spilled water, the slip in the kitchen, Mrs. Henderson's concern, Victoria's sudden appearance with papers in hand. The mention of Dr. Morrison, whom I'd never met. The rushed packing, the drive to Shady Pines. And you said Victoria told you this was temporary. Yes. She said we'd find a better long-term solution, maybe an apartment with assisted living services. She made it sound like Shady Pines was just a stopgap. But this document says long-term residential care and voluntary commitment. Those are very specific legal terms. Raymond shook his head. Eleanor, I think Victoria presented you with one set of papers while getting you to sign another. It's an old con, and it works especially well on people who trust the person deceiving them. The betrayal cut through me like a knife. My own daughter had tricked me, lied to me, stolen from me. What do? I asked. She has power of attorney, she's selling my house. The staff here thinks I'm mentally incompetent. How do I fight this? Raymond closed his briefcase with a decisive snap. First, we need to get you out of here. Second, we need to revoke Victoria's power of attorney and freeze any sale of your property. Third, we need to have you evaluated by an independent physician who can document that you're of sound mind. And fourth, his expression hardened, we need to hold your daughter accountable for what she's done. Can you really get me out of here? They told me I signed voluntary commitment papers. Voluntary commitment can be revoked at any time by the person who signed it. That's what makes it voluntary. The problem is, they'll argue you're not mentally competent to revoke it. That's why we need the independent evaluation first. How long will that take? I'm going to make some calls this afternoon. I know several excellent geriatric psychiatrists who can see you on short notice. We'll need to do the evaluation off-site, which means getting you out of here for a few hours. Do they allow residents to leave for appointments? I don't know. I haven't left since I arrived. Well, find out. Eleanor, I need you to do something for me. I need you to act compliant and cooperative. Don't argue with the staff, don't demand things, don't give them any reason to put you in a more restrictive setting, or increase your medications. Can you do that? I nodded. Rosa, one of the nurses here, she told me the same thing. She's been helping me. Good, hold on to that ally. You're gonna need her. Raymond stood up and put a hand on my shoulder. Eleanor, Henry was my best friend for 50 years. I promised him I'd watch out for you if anything happened to him. I'm sorry I didn't check in sooner. I should have realized something was wrong when I didn't hear from you. You sent me a Christmas card. I meant to write back, but with Henry's death and everything. I trailed off, realizing that in my grief, I'd let my connections to the outside world slip away. That isolation had made me vulnerable. It's not your fault, Raymond said firmly, reading my thoughts. You've done nothing wrong here. Everything that's happened to you is the result of your daughter's choices, not yours. Don't forget that. After Raymond left, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Real, solid hope that I might actually get out of this nightmare. But hope, I was about to learn, could be a dangerous thing. That evening, as Rosa was helping me prepare for bed, Judith from administration appeared in my doorway with 2 security guards. Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come with us. My heart lurched.
Why?
What's wrong? We've received a concerning report about your visitor today. We need to verify some information. Judge Clark is a family friend. There's nothing concerning about. Mrs. Thompson, please don't make this difficult. Judith's voice was cold. We're moving you to a different room for the time being. Just a precaution. Rosa stepped forward. What kind of precaution? Mrs. Thompson hasn't done anything wrong. This doesn't concern you, Rosa. Continue with your rounds. What room are you moving her to? Rosa persisted. Judith's expression hardened. That's confidential patient information. And that's when I knew they were moving me to the secured unit. The place Rosa had warned me about, where residents could be held indefinitely if they were deemed a danger to themselves or others. I'm not going, I said, my voice shaking. I have a right to stay in my own room. Mrs. Thompson, you're becoming agitated. This is exactly the kind of behavior that concerns us. Judith nodded to the security guards. Gentlemen, please assist Mrs. Thompson to her new accommodations. Wait. Rosa pulled out her phone. I'm documenting this. Mrs. Thompson is being moved against her will without any medical justification. She's calm and coherent. This is unlawful restraint. Rosa Martinez, you are interfering with facility operations. Leave now, or I'll have you escorted out and report you to the state nursing board. Rosa looked at me, conflict clear on her face. If she kept fighting, she'd lose her job and her nursing license. She wouldn't be able to help me at all. It's okay, Rosa, I said quietly. I'll go. It's okay. Just, please call Judge Clark. Tell him what happened. Judith snatched Rosa's phone from her hand. You'll do no such thing. Any communication with outside parties regarding patient care is a violation of APA and grounds for immediate termination. They led me down a hallway I'd never been in before, through 2 sets of locked doors that required keycard access. The secured unit was eerily quiet. Some rooms had their doors open, revealing residents strapped into chairs or lying motionless in beds. Others had doors with small windows and faces pressed against the glass, mouths moving in silent pleas. My new room was tiny, barely large enough for a single bed and a small dresser. There was no phone. The window had bars on it, the door locked from the outside. Someone will bring your things later, Judith said. You'll be evaluated by our staff psychiatrist in the morning. Evaluated for what? To determine if you're experiencing a psychotic break. Judge Clark's visit seems to have triggered some paranoid delusions. We need to make sure you're stable before we can return you to the general population.
I'm not having delusions. Everything I told him is true.
Or Mrs. Thompson, you're claiming your daughter is trying to steal your house, that our staff doctor falsified your medical records, that you've been committed here against your will. These are classic signs of persecution complex and paranoid ideation. She left before I could respond, and I heard the distinctive click of the lock engaging. I was trapped. I sank down on the bed, my mind racing. They'd cut me off from Rosa, from Raymond, from any help. By morning, some staff psychiatrist would evaluate me and add more false diagnoses to my file. They'd probably start me on antipsychotic medications that would make me foggy and compliant. And Victoria would complete the sale of my house while I was drugged and locked away, unable to fight back. I thought about Henry, about how he'd fought so hard during his cancer treatment, how he'd never given up even when the doctors said there was no hope. He'd kept fighting right up until the end, not because he thought he could win, but because giving up wasn't in his nature. I wasn't going to give up either. I looked around the small room, taking inventory. The bed was bolted to the floor. The dresser was empty and also bolted down. There was a small bathroom with a toilet and sink, but no mirror. Nothing that could be broken and used as a weapon or to harm oneself. But there was a vent in the ceiling. And the door, while locked from the outside, had a gap at the bottom, large enough to slide something underneath. I had the papers Raymond had looked at. I had my journal where I'd documented everything. And I had Henry's photo, which I'd tucked into my pocket before the guards came. If I couldn't get out, maybe I could get information out. I tore a page from my journal and began to write. My name is Eleanor Grace Thompson. I am 72 years old and of sound mind. I am being held against my will at Shady Pines Care Facility in a locked room. My daughter, Victoria Thompson Sterling, has fraudulently committed me here to steal my property. Judge Raymond Clark's home 555 Zohumphrey 7s can verify my story. Please help me. Room C7, secured unit. I folded the paper into a small square and waited. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Someone was making rounds, checking on the residents. I watched through the small window in my door as a figure in scrubs moved from room to room, peering through the windows, checking charts on the wall. When the person reached my door, I held up my note to the window. The figure stopped. Even in the dim light, I could see it was a young man, probably an orderly or nursing assistant. He looked at the note, then at me, then back at the note. For a long moment, we just stared at each other through the glass. Then he shook his head and walked away. My heart sank. He wasn't going to help. Why would he? I was just another confused old lady making wild accusations. But 10 minutes later I heard footsteps returning. A piece of paper slid under my door. I grabbed it with shaking hands and read, I believe you. Morning shift change is at 6 a.m. Third door on left after you exit secured unit is janitorial closet, unlocked. Stay there till 6:30 when day shift meeting starts. Everyone will be in conference room. Exit through side door near laundry. Rosa is waiting in parking lot. We'll unlock your door at 5:45 a.m. Be ready. Destroy this note. I read it 3 times, memorizing every word, then tore it into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Someone was helping me escape. I didn't know who was or why they were willing to risk their job to help me. But I wasn't going to waste this chance. I lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and waited for morning. Sleep was impossible. Every sound in the hallway made my heart race. What if it was a trap? What if had told Judith, and they were testing me to see if I'd try to escape, giving them more evidence that I was paranoid and delusional? But what choice did I have? If I stayed, they'd drug me into submission. If I tried to escape and failed, at least I'd have tried. At 5:43 a.m. by the clock on the wall, I heard the sound of a key card being swiped. My door clicked open. Was a young black man, probably in his mid-20s, with kind eyes and nervous hands. He held a finger to his lips and gestured for me to follow. We moved quickly and quietly through the secured unit. Most of the residents were still asleep. A few pressed their faces against their windows, watching us pass with hollow, hopeless eyes. Led me through the first set of locked doors, then the second. We were back in the main facility now, in territory I recognized. He pointed to the third door on the left, the janitorial closet, just like he'd said. "Thank you," I whispered. "Why are you helping me?" "My grandmother," he said quietly. "They did this to her too. I was too young to help her then. But I can help you." He squeezed my hand once, then disappeared down the hallway. I slipped into the janitorial closet and pulled the door almost closed, leaving just a crack so I could see out. The smell of cleaning chemicals was overwhelming, but I barely noticed. My entire body was shaking, from Parkinson's, from fear, from the sheer adrenaline of what I was doing. At 6:05 I heard voices as the night shift staff made their way to the conference room for the morning meeting. At 6:15 the hallway fell quiet. At 6:20 I heard Judith's voice, sharp with anger, echoing down the corridor. "What do you mean she's gone? How does a patient escape from a locked room?" They discovered I was missing. At 6:25 I heard running footsteps shouting chaos. At 6:30 I slipped out of the closet and ran for the side door near the laundry, just like had instructed. The door opened to a loading area, and there, idling next to the dumpsters, was Rosa's small Honda Civic. I'd never been so happy to see anyone in my life. I threw myself into the passenger seat and Rosa floored it, tires squealing as we raced out of the parking lot. "Are you okay?" she asked, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I am now," I said. "Rosa, how did you?" "Judge Clark called me last night after Judith kicked him out. He told me they'd moved you to the secured unit. I've been in this parking lot since 4 a.m. waiting for you." "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe. Judge Clark is meeting us there." I looked back at Shady Pines as it disappeared behind us, getting smaller and smaller until it was just a gray blot on the horizon. I was free. For now. Rosa drove us to a small law office in the older part of town, a brick building with ivy growing up the sides and a discreet brass plaque that read, "Clark and Associates, Attorneys at Law." Judge Raymond Clark was waiting for us at the door. The moment I stepped out of the car, he wrapped me in a gentle hug. "Eleanor, thank God you're safe." When Rosa called me last night and told me what they'd done, he shook his head. "Come inside, we have a lot to discuss." The office was warm and comfortable, filled with leather-bound books and the smell of old paper and coffee. Raymond led us to a conference room where a woman in her 50s was waiting, along with a distinguished-looking man with silver hair. "Eleanor, this is Patricia Morrison. No relation to that quack who signed your commitment papers. She's a civil rights attorney who specializes in elder abuse cases. And this is Dr. Samuel Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist. They're both here to help you." Over the next 2 hours, I told my story again from the beginning. Dr. Chen took notes and occasionally asked questions, his manner professional but kind. Patricia recorded everything on a small device, stopping me periodically to clarify details. When I finished, Dr. Chen set down his pen. "Mrs. Thompson, I'd like to conduct a formal cognitive evaluation if you're willing. It will take about an hour, and it will give us documented proof of your mental competency, of course. Whatever you need." The evaluation was thorough. Memory tests, problem-solving exercises, questions about current events, spatial reasoning tasks. Some of it reminded me of the activities I used to do with my students, and I found myself relaxing into the familiar rhythms of teaching and learning. When we finished, Dr. Chen smiled. "Mrs. Thompson, you scored in the 96th percentile for your age group. Your memory is excellent, your reasoning is sound, and you show no signs whatsoever of dementia or cognitive impairment. In my professional opinion, there is absolutely no medical justification for your commitment to a long-term care facility." I felt tears spring to my eyes. "So I'm not crazy, I'm not confused. You're one of the sharpest 72-year-olds I've ever evaluated," he said firmly. "Your Parkinson's disease is mild and well controlled. You're fully capable of independent living with perhaps some minor accommodations for your tremors. What's been done to you is unconscionable." Patricia leaned forward. "Eleanor, I've been reviewing the documents you brought with you. There are some serious legal issues here. The signature on several of these forms doesn't match your verified signature. The medical evaluation by Dr. Morrison contains factual inaccuracies and appears to have been written before he ever met you. And the power of attorney your daughter is using was supposed to only activate if you became incapacitated, which you clearly are not. Can we stop her from selling my house? Already done, Raymond said. I filed an emergency injunction with the court this morning. As of 9 a.m., all transactions involving your property are frozen pending a full hearing. Victoria can't sell, can't transfer title, can't do anything with that house. Relief flooded through me so powerfully that I had to grip the edge of the table. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. We still have a fight ahead of us. Raymond pulled out a thick folder. Victoria's attorney has already responded to the injunction. They're arguing that you're mentally incompetent and that you've been manipulated by outside parties, meaning me and Rosa, into making false accusations. But Dr. Chen just evaluated me. He said I'm fine, and will use his evaluation in court. But Eleanor, I need you to understand something. Victoria isn't going to give up easily. She stands to lose millions if this development deal falls through. She's going to fight dirty. What do you mean? Patricia answered. She's going to try to discredit you. She'll bring in her own doctors who will testify that you're confused. She'll paint Judge Clark as an opportunist taking advantage of a vulnerable widow. She'll claim Rosa manipulated you for personal gain. She'll twist every fact until she's the concerned daughter trying to protect her mother, and we're the villains trying to exploit you. But that's not true. We know that. But juries can be swayed by emotional appeals, especially when it's a daughter talking about her elderly mother. We need to be prepared for that. Raymond added, there's something else. I did some digging into Victoria's finances. She and her husband are heavily leveraged on this development deal. They've borrowed against their own properties, taken out business loans, invested everything they have. This deal falls apart, they could lose everything. So this isn't just about greed, I said slowly. It's about desperation, exactly, which makes Victoria even more dangerous. Desperate people do desperate things. As if on cue, Patricia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression darkened. Eleanor, are you aware that Victoria has filed a missing person report? She's claiming you've been kidnapped from Shady Pines by Judge Clark and are being held against your will. What? That's tragic, Raymond said grimly. If the police get involved, if she can convince them you were taken from the facility by force, she can paint us as the criminals and herself as the victim. What do we do? We'll go on the offensive. Patricia stood up. We're holding a press conference this afternoon. Eleanor, you're going to tell your story publicly. We're going to expose what Victoria did, what Shady Pines allowed to happen, and we're going to make sure everyone knows you're here of your own free will, sound of mind, and fighting for your rights. The thought of facing cameras, of making my private pain public, made my stomach churn. But I thought about all the other elderly people trapped in places like Shady Pines, whose families had stolen from them, who had no Raymond or Rosa or Patricia to fight for them. Okay, I said. I'll do it. The press conference was held at 4 o'clock that afternoon in Raymond's office. Patricia had reached out to local news stations, and to my surprise, several had sent reporters and camera crews. I sat at a table with Raymond on one side and Patricia on the other. Dr. Chen sat behind us, ready to verify his evaluation if needed. Rosa had wanted to be there, but Patricia advised against it. Victoria's lawyers would use Rosa's presence to claim she had inappropriate influence over me. Patricia spoke first, outlining the basic facts of the case in clear legal terms. Then Raymond added his perspective as both a family friend and an officer of the court. Then it was my turn. I looked at the cameras, at the reporters with their notepads and recorders, and I thought about Henry. He'd always said I had a gift for telling stories, for making people understand and care. I'd used that gift to teach children for 40 years. Now I needed to use it one more time. My name is Eleanor Grace Thompson. I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. I'm 72 years old. I was a teacher for 40 years. I raised 2 children. I was married to my husband Henry for 42 years until he passed away 6 months ago. And 3 weeks ago, my daughter put me in a nursing home so she could steal my house. I told them everything. The fall that wasn't serious. Victoria's sudden concern. The rushed admission to Shady Pines. The papers I'd signed without understanding. The discovery that my house was being sold. The false medical records. The locked room in the secured unit. I'm not a perfect person, I said. I have Parkinson's disease. My hands shake. I move a little slower than I used to. But my mind is sharp. I can take care of myself. I don't need to be locked away like a criminal or a child. And I certainly don't deserve to have my own daughter lie to me, steal from me, and try to have me declared incompetent so she can profit from my property. A reporter raised her hand. Mrs. Thompson, your daughter claims she was acting out of concern for your safety. What would you say to that? I would say that if she was truly concerned about my safety, she would have talked to me. She would have involved my actual doctor, not some specialist who'd never met me. She would have looked for solutions that let me keep my independence and my home. Instead, she chose the one option that benefited her financially. That's not concern. That's exploitation. Another reporter. What do you want to happen now? I want my home back. I want my autonomy back. I want my daughter held accountable for what she's done. And I want people to know that elder abuse doesn't always look like bruises and broken bones. Sometimes it looks like a concerned child making decisions for your own good. Sometimes it looks like legal documents and medical evaluations. Sometimes it's done by people who are supposed to love you most. After the press conference ended, Patricia's phone started ringing almost immediately. Other news outlets wanting interviews. A local advocacy group for seniors asking if I'd speak at their next meeting. A state legislator's office inquiring about my case. You've started something here, Eleanor, Patricia said with a slight smile. People are paying attention. Raymond drove me to a small hotel where he'd booked a room under a false name. Just a precaution, he explained. Victoria knows you're out of Shady Pines by now. I don't want her showing up and causing a scene. The hotel room was simple but clean, nothing like my house but infinitely better than Shady Pines. Rosa had stopped by earlier with some clothes and toiletries. She'd somehow gotten into my house and retrieved my things. How did you manage that? I'd asked her. She just smiled mysteriously. I have my ways. Now alone in the hotel room, I turned on the television and found the local news. And there I was, gray-haired and trembling but speaking clearly and firmly, telling the truth about what had happened to me. The phone in the room rang. I picked it up cautiously. Eleanor. It was Victoria's voice, tight with controlled fury. What the hell do you think you're doing? My first instinct was to apologize, to smooth things over, to be the peacemaker I'd always been. But then I thought about the locked room, the false medical records, the house she'd tried to steal. I'm fighting back, I said calmly. That's what I'm doing? Fighting back.
Mom, you're destroying our family.
Do you have any idea what this press conference has done? My clients are calling asking questions. The development partners are threatening to pull out. You're ruining everything. I'm ruining everything.
Victoria, you tried to steal my house. I was trying to take care of you.
You can't live alone anymore, Mom. You're sick. You need help. I need help, but I don't need to be locked in a nursing home. And I certainly don't need my daughter lying to me and forging my signature on legal documents. There was a long pause. When Victoria spoke again, her voice was different, harder, colder. You can't prove I forged anything. Actually, I can. Dr. Chen has my authentic signature on file from today's evaluation. We're going to have a handwriting expert compare it to the signatures on those admission papers. Want to guess what they're going to find? Mom, listen to me carefully. Drop this. Drop the lawsuit, drop the injunction, drop everything. Move back into Shady Pines voluntarily, let me sell the house, and I'll make sure you're comfortable for the rest of your life. Fight me, and I'll drag this through court for years. I'll bring in psychiatrists who'll testify you're delusional. I'll subpoena your medical records going back decades. I'll make you look like a confused, vindictive old woman who's being manipulated by opportunists. Is that really how you want to spend your final years? For a moment, I was that frightened woman in the secured unit again, trapped and powerless. But only for a moment. Victoria, I taught you better than this. I taught you about honesty, integrity, doing the right thing even when it's hard. I don't know when you forgot those lessons, but I'm not going to enable your behavior by backing down. If you want to fight, you'll have one. And Victoria, I've already won the most important battle. I got out of that place, and everyone knows the truth now. Whatever happens in court, you'll always be the daughter who tried to steal from her own mother. You'll have to live with that for the rest of your life. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking badly now, and not from the Parkinson's. I'd just burned that bridge completely. There was no going back to pretending we were a happy family, no more avoiding conflict to keep the peace. But I also felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, powerful. I'd stood up to my daughter. I'd spoken my truth. I'd refused to be a victim, and for the first time since Henry died, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Patricia worked on building our case. She'd found 3 other families in the area whose elderly relatives had been committed to Shady Pines under questionable circumstances, all of whom had valuable property. She'd also discovered that Dr. Morrison had a history of signing questionable medical evaluations, and that he received substantial, consulting fees from facilities like Shady Pines. This is bigger than just your case, she told me. We're uncovering a pattern of elder abuse facilitated by corrupt medical professionals and complicit care facilities. The State Attorney General's office has opened an investigation. Raymond was working on the property angle, documenting exactly how much Victoria and her partners stood to gain from the development deal. The numbers were staggering, over $20 million in projected profits. That's why she's fighting so hard, he explained. It's not just about your house, it's about her entire financial future. Dr. Chen had written a detailed report not just about my cognitive evaluation, but about the falsified medical records in my file. Dagar, Morrison claimed you had moderate dementia and frequently became confused and disoriented. I've tested you extensively, and you show none of those symptoms. Either he never actually examined you, or he deliberately falsified his findings. Either way, it's medical malpractice and possibly fraud. The days leading up to the hearing were a blur of meetings with lawyers, interviews with investigators, and phone calls with reporters following the story. The press conference had struck a nerve. Apparently, elder financial abuse was far more common than most people realized, and my case had become a symbol of a much larger problem. But the hardest part was the loneliness. I couldn't go back to my house. It was still technically under Victoria's control until the hearing. I couldn't visit my friends because Victoria might use that to claim I was being coached or influenced. I couldn't even call my son Marcus, because Victoria had apparently convinced him that I was having a mental breakdown and that Raymond and Rosa were taking advantage of me. The only people I could talk to were Raymond, Patricia, Rosa, and Dr. Chen. And while they were wonderful, they weren't my family. They weren't the people I'd expected to surround me in my old age. One evening, Rosa came to visit me at the hotel. She brought Chinese takeout and a stack of magazines. "Thought you might be going stir-crazy in here," she said with a warm smile. We ate together and talked about everything except the case. Rosa told me about her nursing classes, about her family, about her dreams of eventually opening a care facility that actually cared about its residents. "I want to create the kind of place my grandmother deserved," she said. "Where people are treated with dignity and respect. Where families are partners in care, not obstacles to profit. That's a beautiful dream," I told her. "And I think you'll make it happen. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that." Rosa set down her food and looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Thompson, after this is all over, after you get your house back, what are you going to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Go home, I suppose. Try to rebuild some kind of life. Have you thought about what you want that life to look like?" I was quiet for a moment. "I want to feel useful again. I want to matter. For 40 years I was a teacher. I mattered to my students. Then I was a wife and mother. I mattered to my family. But now Henry's gone, my children are... Well, Victoria's done what she's done and Marcus believes her. I feel like I don't matter to anyone anymore." "You matter to me," Rosa said softly. "You matter to Judge Clark. You matter to all those other families who are going to be helped because you were brave enough to speak up." She hesitated, then continued. "Mrs. Thompson, I've been thinking. What if you helped me with my dream? What if we worked together to change how elder care works in this community?" "What do you mean?" "I mean advocacy, education, support for families and seniors. You're a teacher, you know how to communicate, how to help people understand complex issues. And after what you've been through, you understand the system from the inside. We could make a real difference together." The idea sent a spark of excitement through me. A purpose, a reason to get up in the morning, a way to turn my pain into something meaningful. "I'd like that," I said. "I'd like that very much," Rosa grinned. "Good. Because I've already started working on a proposal for a senior advocacy center. I just need a director with experience in education and a personal understanding of the issues." She pulled out a folder. "Any chance you know someone who fits that description?" I couldn't help but laugh. It felt good to laugh again. "Rosa Martinez, are you offering me a job?" "Depends." "Eleanor Thompson, are you accepting?" I looked at the proposal she'd laid out. Community center offering resources, support groups, legal aid referrals, and education programs for seniors and their families. It was ambitious and would take years to build. But it was also exactly the kind of work that could give meaning to whatever years I had left. "Yes," I said. "I'm accepting." We spent the rest of the evening planning and dreaming, and for a few hours, I forgot about Victoria and the lawsuit and everything that had been taken from me. I focused instead on what could be built, what could be created, what good could come from all this pain. Later that night, alone again in my hotel room, I pulled out Henry's photo and whispered to him like I did every night. "I think I'm going to be okay, sweetheart. It's been hard. Harder than anything except losing you. But I'm finding my way. And I think I'm finally learning what you tried to teach me all those years, that I'm stronger than I know." The photo didn't answer, of course. But I could almost hear Henry's voice in my head, warm and proud. "I always knew you were strong, Ellie. I'm glad you're finally figuring it out too." Tomorrow was the hearing. Tomorrow I would face Victoria in court and fight for my home, my dignity, my life. But tonight I had hope. And sometimes hope was enough. The courthouse was an imposing granite building in the center of town, with marble columns and brass fixtures that spoke of justice and authority. As Raymond helped me up the steps, my legs were shaking more than usual that morning. I saw a crowd of reporters waiting by the entrance. "Mrs. Thompson, do you have a statement? How do you feel about facing your daughter in court? What do you want the judge to know?" Patricia stepped forward and raised her hand. "Mrs. Thompson will have an opportunity to tell her story in court. That's all we have to say right now." We pushed through the crowd and into the building. The hallway outside the courtroom was already filling with people. I saw Victoria standing with her husband Trevor and a team of expensive-looking lawyers in dark suits. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly. My son Marcus was there too, standing slightly apart from Victoria. When he saw me, his face crumpled with confusion and what looked like pain. He started to move toward me, but Trevor grabbed his arm and whispered something in his ear. Marcus stopped, torn between his sister and his mother. "It's okay," I told Raymond quietly. "He doesn't know what to believe." "We'll after today," Raymond said grimly. We entered the courtroom, a formal space with wood paneling and a high ceiling. Judge Andrea Whitmore was already at the bench, a stern-looking woman in her early 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "I'll rise," the bailiff announced, though we were already standing. Judge Whitmore surveyed the crowded courtroom. "This is an emergency hearing regarding the guardianship and property rights of Eleanor Grace Thompson. Let's be very clear from the start, this is a courtroom, not a circus. I've seen the media coverage of this case, and while I understand the public interest, my only concern is the facts and the law. Is that understood?" Everyone nodded. "Good, Ms. Morrison, you're representing Mrs. Thompson." Patricia stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "And Mr. Blackwell, you're representing Victoria Thompson Sterling." A silver-haired man in an immaculate suit stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Edward Blackwell for the respondent. "Before we begin, I want to address the elephant in the room." Judge Whitmore looked directly at me. "Mrs. Thompson, are you here of your own free will?" I stood on shaky legs. "Yes, Your Honor." "Have you been coerced or manipulated into bringing this action?" "No, Your Honor. I'm here because my daughter put me in a nursing home against my will and attempted to sell my house without my permission." Judge Whitmore nodded. "We'll hear testimony on that. Please be seated." She turned to the lawyers. "I've reviewed the preliminary filings. Ms. Morrison, you're asking the court to revoke the power of attorney granted to Victoria Thompson Sterling to restore Mrs. Thompson's property rights and to prevent any sale or transfer of her home. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor." "We're also asking the court to order an investigation into potential fraud, forgery, and elder abuse." "That's a serious allegation." "We have serious evidence, Your Honor." Judge Whitmore turned to Mr. Blackwell. "And your client's position?" Blackwell stood smoothly. "Your Honor, my client is a devoted daughter who became concerned when her elderly mother's health deteriorated. Mrs. Thompson has Parkinson's disease and was living alone following her husband's death. After Mrs. Thompson suffered a fall, my client consulted with medical professionals who recommended supervised care. Mrs. Thompson voluntarily agreed to admission to Shady Pines Care Facility. My client has done nothing wrong and has acted only in her mother's best interests." "Then why is the mother sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom?" Judge Whitmore asked dryly. Blackwell didn't miss a beat. "Because, Your Honor, my client believes her mother has unfortunately fallen under the influence of individuals who are exploiting her vulnerability for their own gain. We have concerns about Judge Clark's involvement, given that he stands to benefit financially from managing Mrs. Thompson's affairs. We also have concerns about a nurse from Shady Pines who befriended Mrs. Thompson and may have inappropriate motivations." I felt Rosa stiffen beside me. She'd insisted on coming despite Patricia's concerns, and now Victoria's lawyer was attacking her integrity. "Those are also serious allegations, Mr. Blackwell," Judge Whitmore said. "I assume you have evidence." "Would do, Your Honor." "Very well. Let's hear the evidence from both sides. Ms. Morrison, call your first witness." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we call Dr. Samuel Chen to the stand." Dr. Chen was sworn in and took his seat. Patricia walked him through his credentials. Over 30 years as a geriatric psychiatrist, board-certified, author of numerous papers on elder care and cognitive assessment. "Dr. Chen, did you conduct a cognitive evaluation of Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes, I did. A comprehensive evaluation lasting approximately 90 minutes. "And what were your findings?" "Mrs. Thompson scored in the 96th percentile for her age group across all measures. Her memory is excellent, her reasoning is sound, her judgment is intact. She shows no signs of dementia, confusion, or cognitive impairment. In my professional opinion, she is fully capable of making her own decisions and managing her own affairs." Patricia introduced Dr. Chen's written report into evidence. "Dear Chen, you also reviewed Mrs. Thompson's medical file from Shady Pines. What did you find?" "I found numerous discrepancies. The file claims Mrs. Thompson has moderate dementia, frequent confusion, memory deficits, and episodes of disorientation. None of that is consistent with my evaluation or with Mrs. Thompson's actual cognitive status. Who signed those medical evaluations? A. Dr. Kevin Morrison. Did Dr. Morrison's evaluation include the kind of comprehensive testing you performed? No. His evaluation appears to have been based primarily on a brief interview and secondhand information from family members. There's no evidence he conducted any standardized cognitive testing. In your professional opinion, is Dr. Morrison's evaluation accurate? No. It's either grossly inadequate or deliberately falsified. Mr. Blackwell objected. Speculation, Your Honor. I'll allow it, Judge Whitmore said. Dr. Chen is offering his expert opinion based on his own evaluation. Continue, Ms. Morrison. Patricia Heddubrison. Chen walked through several more details establishing not just that I was competent, but that the medical records used to justify my commitment were fundamentally flawed. When it was Blackwell's turn to cross-examine, he came out swinging. Dr. Chen, isn't it true that Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurological disorder? Yes. And isn't it true that many Parkinson's patients eventually develop cognitive impairment? Some do. Yes. But not all, and not necessarily in the early stages of the disease. But Mrs. Thompson could develop dementia at any time, couldn't she? Anyone could develop dementia at any time, Mr. Blackwell. That doesn't mean we should preemptively remove people's rights. Several people in the courtroom snickered. Judge Whitmore banged her gavel once. Order? Blackwell pressed on. Dr. Chen, you evaluated Mrs. Thompson on one occasion for 90 minutes. Dr. Morrison had access to her complete medical history and consulted with her family members. Isn't it possible that he had a more complete picture of her condition? It's possible that he had more historical information. But a cognitive evaluation isn't based on history, it's based on current functioning. And Mrs. Thompson's current functioning is excellent. But you don't know how she was functioning 3 weeks ago, do you? I know that Parkinson's disease doesn't cause sudden cognitive decline. If Mrs. Thompson is cognitively intact now, she was almost certainly cognitively intact 3 weeks ago. Blackwell tried a few more angles, but Dr. Chen held firm. He'd done hundreds of these evaluations, testified in dozens of cases, and he wasn't intimidated by aggressive cross-examination. Patricia's next witness was a handwriting expert who'd compared my signature on Dr. Chen's evaluation forms with the signatures on the Shady Pines admission papers. Her testimony was technical but damning. The signatures on the admission papers showed evidence of tracing and forgery. In my professional opinion, the expert said, these signatures were not made freely by Mrs. Thompson. They were either traced over a genuine signature or written by someone else attempting to mimic her handwriting. When Blackwell cross-examined, he suggested that Parkinson's tremors could cause signature variations. The expert calmly explained that tremors create specific patterns that were absent from the questioned signatures, and that her analysis accounted for the effects of Parkinson's disease. Then Patricia called me to the stand. Walking up to that witness chair was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I had to raise my right hand and swear to tell the truth while facing my daughter across the courtroom. Victoria wouldn't look at me. She kept her eyes fixed on the table in front of her, her face expressionless. Patricia took me through my story chronologically. The fall in the kitchen. Victoria's sudden arrival with papers already prepared. The rushed departure to Shady Pines. The discovery that my house was being sold. Mrs. Thompson, when you signed the admission papers, did you understand what you were signing? No. Victoria told me it was temporary, just until we found a better solution. She told me I could change my mind. She never mentioned anything about long-term commitment or giving up control of my property. Did you authorize your daughter to sell your house? Absolutely not. That house is my home. My husband and I bought it 45 years ago. We raised our children there. He died there. I never would have agreed to sell it. What happened when you tried to get copies of the paperwork you'd signed? I told her about Judith's delays, about Dr. Morrison's visit and his diagnosis of anosognosia, about being moved to the secured unit. Mrs. Thompson, why did you leave Shady Pines? Because I was being held prisoner. I was locked in a room, cut off from anyone who could help me, and I was told I'd be evaluated by a psychiatrist who would almost certainly add more false diagnoses to my file. I was afraid that if I stayed, I'd be drugged into compliance and would never get out. So you escaped. With help from a compassionate staff member and Rosa Martinez, yes, I escaped. Patricia sat down and Mr. Blackwell stood up for cross-examination. I braced myself. Mrs. Thompson, you love your daughter, don't you? The question caught me off guard. Yes, of course I do. And you want to believe the best of her? I did. I don't anymore. Isn't it possible that you've misunderstood her intentions? That she genuinely believed you needed more care than you were getting? No. I heard her on the phone talking to a realtor about selling my house. She was laughing about it. You claim you heard that. But you were in a nursing home at the time, possibly on medications. Could you have been confused? I wasn't on any medications except my regular Parkinson's medication. And I wasn't confused. I know what I heard, Mrs. Thompson. Your husband died 6 months ago. Is it possible that your grief has affected your judgment? I felt anger flare inside me. My grief has not affected my judgment. My judgment is perfectly sound, which is why I know that what my daughter did was wrong. You're very attached to that house, aren't you? It's my home. So attached that you might not be thinking clearly about what's best for you. Blackwell, I'm 72 years old. I've been making decisions for myself for over 50 years. I think I know what's best for me better than my daughter does, especially when what's best for me happens to make her millions of dollars. A Judge Whitmore actually smiled slightly at that. Mr. Blackwell, move on. A Blackwell tried a few more approaches, but I held my ground. Finally, he sat down. Redirect, Ms. Morrison, Judge Whitmore asked. Just one question, Your Honor. Patricia stood. Mrs. Thompson, if the court restores your rights and allows you to return home, do you have a plan for your care? Yes. I'll hire a cleaning service to help with the heavy work. I'll arrange for grocery delivery if needed. I'll install grab bars in the bathroom and other safety features. I'll stay connected to my neighbors and friends. And I'll continue seeing Dr. Peters, my actual doctor, who knows my medical history and who I trust. I'm perfectly capable of living independently with some reasonable accommodations, thank you. No further questions. After a short break, it was Victoria's turn to present her case. Mr. Blackwell called Victoria to the stand. She was poised and professional, dressed in a conservative suit, her voice steady as she was sworn in. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought she was a concerned daughter doing her best in a difficult situation. Ms. Thompson, Starling, can you tell the court about the events leading up to your mother's admission to Shady Pines? Victoria launched into her version of events. How worried she'd been after Dad died. How she'd noticed Mom seeming confused and forgetful. How Mrs. Henderson had called about the fall. How she'd consulted with medical professionals who recommended supervised care. It was the hardest decision of my life, Victoria said, her voice breaking slightly. But I had to put my mother's safety first, even if she didn't understand or agree. Why did you begin the process of selling your mother's house? Because the house was too much for her to manage alone. It's a large property, old, needs constant maintenance. The money from the sale would have gone directly toward Mom's care, ensuring she had the best possible facility, the best medical attention, everything she needed. Did you stand to profit from this sale? No, Your Honor. Every penny would have gone to Mom's care. It was a bold lie, delivered with apparent sincerity. But Patricia was ready. On cross-examination, Patricia pulled out documents showing Victoria's involvement in the development deal, the projected profits, the loans she and Trevor had taken out betting on this project. Ms. Thompson, Starling, isn't it true that you're a partner in Meridian Development Group? Yes, but, and isn't it true that Meridian Development is planning a major commercial project in your mother's neighborhood? That's one of several projects we're working on. And isn't it true that your mother's property is essential to this project moving forward? It's one of the properties involved, yes. Isn't it true that if this development project succeeds, you and your partners stand to make over $20 million in profit? Victoria hesitated. The project has strong financial projections. Yes. So when you said every penny from the sale would go to your mother's care, that wasn't quite accurate, was it? In reality, selling your mother's house would allow your development deal to proceed, making you personally very wealthy. That's not. I mean, yes, the development would be profitable, but that wasn't why. Ms. Thompson, Sterling, how much does a month at Shady Pines cost? I'm not sure exactly. Patricia pulled out a document. According to their billing records, it's $600 to $500 per month. And how much is your mother's house worth? The market value is approximately $800,000, so at $6,500 per month, the sale of the house would fund approximately 10 years of care at Shady Pines. What were you planning to do with the other $1,000,000+ your development deal would have netted from your mother's property? Victoria's composure finally cracked.
You're twisting everything. I was trying to help my mother.
Were you? Or were you trying to help yourself? Objection? Blackwell shouted. Argumentative? Sustained. Judge Whitmore said. But I think we've heard enough. Ms. Morrison, anything else? No, Your Honor. The witness may step down. Victoria practically fled the witness stand. As she passed my table, she glanced at me, and for just a second I saw something in her eyes. Not remorse exactly, but recognition. Recognition that she'd lost, that the truth was out, that her scheme had fallen apart. Blackwell called a few more witnesses. A neighbor who testified that I'd seemed not quite myself. In recent months, a financial advisor who claimed I'd seemed confused about my accounts. But Patricia demolished them on cross-examination, showing that their observations were vague and their interactions with me had been minimal. Finally, both sides rested. Judge Whitmore announced she'd review the evidence and issue a ruling within 24 hours. As we left the courtroom, Marcus was waiting in the hallway. Victoria and Trevor swept past without a word, but Marcus stood there, looking lost and broken. "Mom?" he said quietly. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what Victoria was doing. I looked at my son, my youngest, who'd always been the peacemaker, who'd always believed the best of people, who'd always trusted his big sister. "I believe you," I said. "But Marcus, you're going to have to decide whose side you're on. Because this isn't over. I'm on your side, Mom. I'm sorry it took me so long to see the truth." He hugged me then, and I held on to my son and cried. Not everything was lost. Not everyone had betrayed me. Maybe, just maybe, some things could still be salvaged from this wreckage. Judge Whitmore's ruling came down the next afternoon. Raymond called me at the hotel, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "Eleanor, we won everything." My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. "Everything. The power of attorney is revoked. Your property rights are fully restored. The sale of your house is permanently blocked. And Eleanor," Judge Whitmore didn't stop there. "She's ordered a full investigation into Shady Pines, Dr. Morrison, and Victoria's business dealings." She used words like older abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Victoria could face criminal charges. I sat down on the bed, barely able to process what I was hearing. "I can go home." "You can go home. I'm coming to pick you up right now." An hour later, Raymond's car pulled up in front of my house. My house, the home I'd thought I'd lost forever. The garden was overgrown, the mailbox was overflowing, but it was still standing. Still mine. Rosa was waiting on the front porch with Marcus. They'd coordinated without telling me, wanting it to be a surprise. Rosa was holding the spare key I'd given her weeks ago, when this nightmare had first begun. "Welcome home, Mrs. Thompson," she said, her eyes bright with tears. I walked through the front door, and it was like being wrapped in a warm blanket. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Henry's chair, the family photos on the mantel, the piano in the corner, the worn rug in the hallway. It smelled like home, like memories, like love. Marcus helped me carry in the few belongings I'd accumulated during my weeks away. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he said for what must have been the 20th time. "I should have questioned Victoria's story. I should have come to see you myself instead of just believing what she told me." "You're here now," I said, squeezing his hand. "That's what matters." Over the next few days, life slowly returned to normal, or rather, to a new normal. Marcus helped me install grab bars in the bathroom and a railing on the front steps. Rosa connected me with a cleaning service and arranged for grocery delivery. Raymond helped me set up automatic bill payments and organize my finances so I could manage them easily despite my tremors. I also started getting phone calls. Lots of them. Other families who'd lost elderly relatives to questionable nursing home placements wanted to know how I'd fought back. Advocacy groups wanted me to speak at their events. A state legislator asked me to testify at hearings about elder abuse reform. A literary agent even called, suggesting I write a book about my experience. "You've become a symbol," Patricia told me during one of her visits. "People see you as proof that you can fight back, that you can win, even when the system seems stacked against you." "I don't feel like a symbol," I admitted. "I feel like a woman who got lucky to have Raymond and Rosa and you." "Maybe. But you're also a woman who refused to give up, even when it would have been easier. That matters." 3 weeks after the court ruling, I received a letter from Victoria. It was short, typed, formal. "Mother, my attorney has advised me to limit communication with you pending the ongoing investigations. However, I wanted you to know that I've decided not to contest the court's decision. The Meridian Development project has been canceled. I've also decided to step back from Thompson Sterling Development. Trevor and I are separating. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I can forgive myself. What I did was wrong. I convinced myself it was for your own good, that I was being practical and responsible, but the truth is I was being selfish and greedy. I let money matter more than you, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I hope someday we might be able to talk. But I understand if that day never comes." Victoria, I read the letter 3 times, trying to find the daughter I'd raised somewhere in those carefully worded sentences. Was she truly sorry? Or just sorry she'd been caught? I didn't know, and maybe it didn't matter. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd be ready to respond. But not today. 6 months later, Rosa and I stood in the community center that would soon house the Eleanor Thompson Senior Advocacy Center. It had taken months of fundraising, planning, and paperwork, but we'd done it. The center would offer legal aid referrals, support groups, educational workshops, and a safe place for seniors to connect and share their experiences. "I still can't believe you named it after me," I said, looking at the sign being installed above the door. "It's your story that made this possible," Rosa replied. "Your courage inspired people to donate, to volunteer, to care." Besides, the Rosa and Eleanor Center didn't fit on the sign. I laughed. Over the past months, Rosa had become more than a friend. She'd become like a daughter to me, the daughter I'd hoped Victoria would be. She'd moved into my guest room temporarily while she finished her nursing degree, and we'd fallen into an easy rhythm of shared meals, late-night conversations, and collaborative planning for the center. Marcus visited every weekend now, sometimes bringing his wife Jennifer and their 2 kids. My grandchildren, who I'd barely known before, were becoming a real part of my life. They called me Grammy and climbed into my lap to hear stories about their grandfather, who they'd never met but who they were learning to love through my memories. As for the legal consequences, Dr. Morrison had lost his medical license and was facing fraud charges. Shady Pines was under investigation by the state, and several other families had come forward with similar stories. Victoria had avoided criminal charges by cooperating with investigators, but her reputation was destroyed. The last I heard, she'd moved to another state and was working as a consultant, far from the real estate development world she'd once dominated. I'd also received an unexpected call from Judge Whitmore. She wanted to know if I'd be willing to serve on a state commission examining elder care reform. "We need voices like yours," she'd said. "People who've been through the system and can speak to its failures." I'd said yes, of course. It seemed like the next logical step in turning my pain into purpose. On the day the Eleanor Thompson Senior Advocacy Center officially opened, over 200 people attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local news crews were there, the mayor made a speech, Patricia Raymond and Dr. Chen were all present, the team that had saved me and helped me save myself. But the moment that mattered most came when an elderly woman approached me after the ceremony. She was probably in her 80s, thin and fragile, looking with worry etched into every line of her face. "Mrs. Thompson," she said quietly. "My name is Margaret Chen. My daughter keeps telling me I need to move into a nursing home. She says I can't take care of myself anymore. But I don't want to go. I'm afraid of what might happen if I do." I took her hand gently. "Margaret, let me introduce you to some people who can help." I walked her over to Rosa, who immediately sat down with her and began explaining her rights, asking questions, taking notes. I watched them together and felt something shift inside me. A sense that all the pain, all the betrayal, all the fear had led to this moment, to being able to help someone else who was where I'd been. As the sun began to set, I found myself standing alone in the center's main room. The walls were decorated with photos, elderly faces, young faces, families together. A banner read, "Your voice matters. Your rights matter. You matter." I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the locked room at Shady Pines, the fear and anger, the moment I'd decided to fight back, the people who'd stood beside me, the daughter who'd betrayed me and the son who'd come back, the life I'd lost and the life I was building. "You'd be proud of me, Henry," I whispered to my absent husband. "I did it. I survived. I fought back and I'm helping others do the same." I could almost hear his voice responding. "I was always proud of you, Ellie. You just needed to be proud of yourself." My hands were shaking, they always would, thanks to the Parkinson's. But the rest of me felt steady, solid, strong. I was 73 years old. I had a progressive neurological disease. I'd been betrayed by my own daughter. I'd been locked away and told I was crazy. I'd lost months of my life to a nightmare I'd never imagined possible. But I'd also discovered reserves of strength I didn't know I had. I'd found allies in unexpected places. I'd learned to stand up for myself and for others. I'd built something meaningful from my pain. I wasn't the same woman who'd slipped on spilled water in her kitchen all those months ago. That woman had been afraid to make waves, afraid to demand what she deserved, afraid to believe she still mattered. This woman, the woman I'd become, knew better. Rosa found me standing there lost in thought. "You okay, Mrs. Thompson?" "Alana." I corrected her gently as I'd been doing for months. "And yes, I'm more than okay. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." She smiled and linked her arm through mine. "Come on, Eleanor, let's lock up. We've got an early day tomorrow. 3 new families are coming in for consultations." 3. "That's wonderful." "It is. And it's all because of you. Because you refused to be silenced." As we turned off the lights and locked the door of the center, I looked back one more time at the sign, Eleanor Thompson Senior Advocacy Center. My name on a building, my story helping others. My pain transformed into purpose. Victoria had tried to erase me, to lock me away, to make me disappear. Instead, she'd given me a platform. She'd given me a cause. She'd given me a reason to fight. And I'd won. Not just the court case. Not just my house or my rights or my freedom. I'd won myself back. I discovered that Eleanor Grace Thompson, retired teacher, widow, woman with Parkinson's disease, survivor of elder abuse, still had value. Still had strength. Still had a voice that deserved to be heard. And I was going to use that voice for as long as I had breath left in my body. Because if my story could help even one person avoid what I'd been through, if it could give even one elderly person the courage to stand up for themselves, If it could change even one family's understanding of what it means to truly care for an aging parent, then every moment of fear and pain and struggle had been worth it. I climbed into Rose's car, and we drove through the evening streets toward home. My home. The home I'd fought for and won. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families to help, new battles to fight. But tonight, I was just going to sit in Henry's chair, look at our family photos, and be grateful. Grateful for the strength I'd found. Grateful for the allies who'd stood beside me. Grateful for the second chance to matter, to help, to make a difference. And grateful to be home.